This summer, Spider-Man Far From Home will bring the MCU's third phase to its climax. Very little is currently known about Phase 4, other than the fact that there will definitely be movies focused on Black Widow and the Eternals, and that means a whole lot of speculation is currently taking place. In this video, we'll take you through some of the most interesting theories about what Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe might have in store for us. Please note, there are Avengers Endgame spoilers here. In a relatively short amount of time, Josh Brolin's Thanos has become one of the most iconic villains in movie history. Having first appeared in the mid-credit scene of 2012's The Avengers, albeit played by a different actor, he didn't appear in the main body of a movie until 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, and his first major appearance didn't come until 2018's Avengers Infinity War. He was killed off in Avengers Endgame, but this theory suggests we haven't seen the last of him. In the comics, the Mad Titan has returned from death on multiple occasions, and the fact he has a strong relationship with the Death entity makes a resurrection very possible. There's an Eternals movie on the way, and Thanos is an Eternal Deviant hybrid, so it's highly plausible that he'll be a part of it. His potential resurrection would follow the trend of other iconic movie villains, like Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and Emperor Palpatine.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Avengers Endgame gave Chris Evans' Steve Rogers, Captain America himself, a fitting end to his MCU story. After the heroes of the franchise emerged victorious against Thanos, Rogers went back in time to return the Infinity Stones back to their respective timelines, to prevent reality from being negatively affected by their absence. He was expected to immediately return to 2023 to rejoin his allies, but he didn't, opting to stay in the past to be with Peggy Carter. He was last seen as an old man in 2023, talking about the fact that he'd lived a long, happy life.
You came back.
But the fact that he wasn't killed off leaves the door open for a return, and this theory suggests that will happen. So in a few years' time, could Rogers be called upon from the past to aid his fellow Avengers against a new threat? It would be as iconic as Luke Skywalker's return to the Star Wars franchise by then. One of the saddest moments in Avengers Endgame came when Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, sacrificed her life so that Clint Barton could take the Soul Stone back to Earth. But there's a theory that she's actually very much still alive. Although Black Widow is set to get her own movie in Phase 4 of the MCU, that's not actually the reason this theory exists, largely because the movie's expected to be a prequel. The reason for the theory's existence is because Steve Rogers returned the Soul Stone at the end of Endgame. And if the soul for a soul rule truly applies, Romanoff should really have been resurrected as a consequence of Rogers giving the stone back. So could it really be that we'll never see her again in Phase 4 in a movie that's not set in the past? Could she really rejoin the 2023 Avengers? We'll just have to wait and see. Of course, the most impactful moment in Avengers Endgame, both in terms of its impact on the fans and the MCU as a franchise, was the death of Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark. He's been the flagship star of the franchise since its inception in 2008, and it won't be the same without him. But there's a theory that suggests his Iron Man mantle will live on, with another character donning the iconic armor. There are a number of possible candidates, but without a doubt the most likely are his daughter Morgan, Harley Keener, and Riri Williams. Keener was the kid from Iron Man 3 who also showed up at Tony's funeral at the end of Endgame, while Williams is a teenage girl who first appeared in comics in 2016 when she took on the Iron Man mantle. It would be awesome to see any of these characters become Iron Man in the MCU, and we really hope it happens.
You happy now?
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 looks set for a 2021 release, and while we're fully expecting to see Thor as part of the team, as well as the search for the 2014 version of Gamora, nothing else is really confirmed. So what else might happen in the third installment of the Space Misfits adventures? Well, one theory suggests that the High Evolutionary will appear. If you're not aware, the High Evolutionary is Herbert Edgar Wyndham, a human who both experimented on animals and evolved himself to possess massive cosmic powers. And the theory suggests that he'll be revealed to be the character responsible for the creation of Rocket Raccoon in the MCU. It would be cool to see Rocket learn about his origins. And the rumors that he'll also get a love interest in the form of the otter-like Lila means the third Guardians outing could be a big movie for Bradley Cooper's furry character.
Why didn't ask to get made?
For a long time now, there have been rumors of a secret invasion plot coming to the MCU, with the shape-shifting Skrulls revealing themselves to have been using their powers to infiltrate Earth for many years. However, when the Captain Marvel movie was released earlier this year, it was revealed that the Skrulls in the MCU were actually a benevolent race who meant no harm to Earth. But could that just be a smokescreen to make their invasion easier? You see, Ben Mendelsohn, who played Talos, a Skrull leader in Captain Marvel, seemed to appear at the end of Avengers Endgame when Peter Parker returned to school. So there's a theory that suggests the Skrull invasion could still be on. So could it really be that some of our favorite MCU characters have actually been aliens in disguise all along? We'll soon find out if the secret invasion is indeed happening. Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury was, of course, one of the victims of the decimation, and he was most recently seen at Tony Stark's funeral at the end of Avengers Endgame. But prior to that, he hadn't been seen for a while, and in a 2017 interview, Jackson said, "I'm still out there trying to figure out what the Skull is going to do." With that in mind, there's a theory that Fury will come to face with the Red Skull in Phase 4 of the MCU. In the main MCU timeline, the Nazi supervillain is no longer guarding the Soul Stone because Thanos took it and destroyed it before he died. So he could still be out there plotting a new nefarious move. Who better to stop him than the headstrong former director of S.H.I.E.L.D.? It's definitely a confrontation we'd love to see in live action, that's for sure. With Thanos gone, at least for the time being, the question now has to be asked regarding who will step up to become the next big bad of the MCU. And one theory is that it will be Norman Osborn.
Who said that?
Now, those of you only familiar with Osborn from the movies might just think of him as the Spider-Man villain known as the Green Goblin, but there's so much more to him than that. In the source material, he's been a scourge to all the heroes of the Marvel Universe, even forming his own Dark Avengers who posed as heroes while actually conducting nefarious activities under Osborn's leadership. Avengers Endgame potentially hinted towards Osborn with the introduction of New Asgard, because in the comics, when Asgard was on Earth, Osborn launched an assault on it in the memorable Siege storyline from 2010, and that would be an awesome arc to portray in live action in the MCU. A very obvious alternative to Norman Osborn, of course, is Doctor Doom, and there's the theory that he will actually be the big bad of the MCU in Phase 4 of the franchise. Now that Disney has purchased Fox, Doom is fair game for Marvel Studios to use, and there really wouldn't be anyone better to pit against the new generation of MCU heroes. Doom is one of the most iconic villains in pop culture history. He's right up there with the likes of the Joker and Darth Vader, and it's only right that he appears in Marvel's flagship movie franchise. That notion rings particularly true when you consider how badly he's been portrayed in previous Fantastic Four movies. He's an expert in the fields of both technology and magic, and he'd offer a threat both physically and mentally to the heroes of the MCU. The movie rights to Namor the Submariner have long been a complicated issue, but fans have been hopeful of him appearing in the MCU for some time regardless. In 2010's Iron Man 2, Atlantis was seemingly highlighted on a S.H.I.E.L.D. map of superhero hotspots, which only increased the expectation he'd arrive in the franchise sooner rather than later. It hasn't happened yet, but a line of dialogue in Avengers Endgame has led fans to theorize he'll finally be introduced in Phase 4. When Okoye was providing Natasha Romanoff with intel via a holographic communication system, she mentioned seismic activity in the Atlantic Ocean, and even said they didn't need to worry about it, as if she knew someone else would deal with it, which has been interpreted as a hint towards Namor's imminent arrival. He's one of Marvel's oldest characters, having first appeared in Timely Comics, the predecessor of the company, and it's about time he appeared on film. Moon Knight isn't exactly one of Marvel's biggest names, but the Egyptian superhero has been touted as a potential inclusion in the MCU going forward for some time, thanks largely to two small details in the second and third Captain America movies. In Captain America the Winter Soldier, the algorithm Arnim Zola created to determine future threats to Hydra targeted lots of individuals, including Bruce Banner and Stephen Strange, but it also referred to a TV anchor in Cairo, Egypt, which could have been referring to Mark Spector. Then in Captain America Civil War, General Ross showed a map full of global incidents related to superheroes, and one of them was in Egypt. With those things in mind, as well as the fact that it's believed Kevin Feige is interested in seeing the character on the big screen, Moon Knight is theorized to make his debut in Phase 4 of the franchise. Black Knight has long been rumored to be coming to the MCU, to the point that some people expected him to appear in Avengers Endgame as part of Doctor Strange's long-term plan to defeat Thanos. That didn't end up happening, but there's now a theory that he'll be introduced in Phase 4 of the franchise. There's been talk of the mysterious city seen in the Quantum Realm and Ant-Man and the Wasp having something to do with Black Knight, but whether or not that's the case remains to be seen. The fact that Captain Britain, a character heavily associated with Black Knight, was name-dropped by Peggy Carter in Avengers Endgame adds fuel to this fire, and Marvel Studios are reportedly interested in bringing him to the big screen, possibly by giving him his own solo trilogy. He'd certainly be a cool addition to the MCU, so hopefully this theory comes true. Given that Marvel Studios is owned by Disney, the last character you'd think would get an MCU movie would be Blade, but there's a theory the character will indeed be introduced in Phase 4 of the franchise, and that he'll be R-rated no less. Kevin Feige has promised that Deadpool won't be toned down now that Disney has purchased Fox, which certainly opens the door for more R-rated content at the MCU. It has in fact been rumored that Wesley Snipes is still being eyed to reprise his role as Blade, even at the grand old age of 56. But it's fair to say most fans would welcome a new actor in the role as well. It remains to be seen if it'll actually happen, but it would certainly add a new dimension to the MCU. Vampires, excessive swearing, and gore are two things it certainly hasn't seen to date. Another character who's long been touted for an appearance in the MCU is Nova, and there's a theory it will finally happen in Phase 4 of the franchise. He certainly fits the bill for the new cosmic direction the franchise looks to be going in, because even though he's a human by the name of Richard Rider, he's very much space-based in terms of his adventures. You may remember the Nova Corps from the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
They got my dick message!
Well, Nova is unsurprisingly a member of the group. The Nova Corps' planet Xandar was decimated by Thanos just prior to the events of Avengers Infinity War, and it would make for an interesting story to see how the Nova Corps deal with the aftermath of that. Maybe it'll lead to the recruitment of new Corps members from around the universe, starting with Ryder, whose introduction could lead to some great stories from the comics, such as Annihilation. Another character from Marvel's cosmic library who's theorized to appear in Phase 4 of the MCU is the Silver Surfer, with a solo movie potentially on the cards. You may remember the character appearing in another movie, 2007's Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, when he was played by Doug Jones and voiced by Lawrence Fishburne. He was actually one of the better aspects of an otherwise poor movie.
I am not the Destroyer.
And if Fox could make him look good, that leads us to believe Marvel Studios would do a fantastic job with him. Now that Disney's purchased Fox, this theory could very well become true. And the Surfer would be one of the more exciting potential additions to the MCU. No hero who's appeared in the MCU to date is as powerful as this guy. It would be amazing to see what he could offer the franchise with his awesome power cosmic. This theory is a little different to the other ones in this video, as it doesn't concern a character or anything to do with stories that might occur in the Phase 4 of the MCU. And it's the theory that the wonderful Taika Waititi will return to the franchise to direct another movie. Waititi, of course, directed 2017's brilliant Thor Ragnarok, which was arguably the funniest movie in the franchise to date, and fans would love to see him back as a result. When James Gunn was fired from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Waititi was rumored to have been asked to be his directorial replacement. But since he turned the offer down and Gunn has since been reinstated, that's not going to happen now. So we eagerly await the potential announcement, regardless of what movie he's chosen to direct going forward. But we definitely hope the movie in question involves Korg, because Waititi has done a great job of voicing the character so far. Avengers Endgame seemed to plant the seeds for the formation of a young Avengers team in the MCU, which has resulted in this theory that the team will be introduced in Phase 4 of the franchise. We saw Clint Barton teaching his daughter how to use a bow and arrow, and even referring to her as Hawkeye. We saw Cassie Lang as a teenager, with Scott Lang saying, "You're so big" to her, which could be a nod to her time as the heroic stature in the comics. We saw the introduction of Tony Stark's daughter, Morgan, who even donned the rescue armor's helmet at one point. And we saw the return of Harley Keener, the kid from Iron Man 3 who could himself take on the Iron Man mantle going forward. Could they all come together to form a youthful new team in the MCU? It's certainly possible, and it would definitely freshen the franchise up. In addition to a young team of heroes, there's also a theory that Phase 4 of the MCU will introduce an all-female team of heroes to the franchise, and with good reason. Both Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame seem to have foreshadowed this idea into absolutely epic scenes. In Infinity War, it happened during the Battle of Wakanda, when Scarlet Witch looked doomed at the hands of Proxima Midnight, prompting Black Widow and Okoye to join forces to assist her. Then in Endgame, during the Battle of Earth, Captain Marvel got an assist to get past Thanos' army from Okoye, Shuri, Scarlet Witch, the Wasp, Nebula, Gamora, Valkyrie, Mantis, and Pepper Potts. So could this really be hinting towards a movie focusing on an all-female superhero team, such as A-Force or the Lady Liberators? We certainly hope so, because it would be awesome, and it might lead to heroes like She-Hulk and Spider-Woman being introduced. Disney's acquisition of Fox allows Marvel Studios to bring a bunch of previously unavailable characters to the MCU, including the X-Men, Deadpool, Doctor Doom, and of course the Fantastic Four. But the Fantastic Four have been done to death in big screen adaptations, in an unreleased 1994 production, the 2005 and 7 Tim Story movies, and that awful 2015 mess by Josh Trank. Their arrival in the MCU is inevitable, but how will they be differentiated from previous live-action versions? Well, this theory suggests they'll arrive in Phase 4 with powers they obtained courtesy of the quantum realm. Previously, they got their powers from space and other dimensions, but given the quantum realm is known to grant powers to those exposed to it in the MCU, Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm might obtain theirs whilst venturing into the mysterious microverse to study it in the franchise. We've known about the existence of the multiverse in the MCU for some time now, but until recently, it's always been suggested that it existed in the form of countless very different dimensions. However, as of the recent Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, we've come to learn that there are literal alternate universes, where Earth also exists, but with a different set of people living on it, with Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio being the first example. With that in mind, and knowing that the snap caused a tear in reality, that enables the MCU to introduce the X-Men in such a ridiculously convenient way. And there's a theory that that's how they'll be introduced in Phase 4. Think about it. If mutants were to just suddenly appear, or if they were revealed to have been there all along, it wouldn't make sense. If they were to arrive from a different version of Earth, though, who could argue with that? What do you think of these MCU Phase 4 theories? Do you have any of your own? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos just like this one. See you next time, guys.